In the last lectures, I added some styles, and please just take these free HTML files which you find attached to this lecture and replace your existing views with them, because I didn't just add some styling, I also added some CSS classes. Now the page will look something like this. You can tweak the styles if this is not your style. Obviously, this course is about the logic, the Node.js logic, and we will continue working on this project, the HTML, and the styling too. One issue we have, though, is right now all the styles are defined in the HTML files, and I want to use external CSS files. Now, the problem is, right now we can't easily import them. But let's see how we at least theoretically would want to do that. Now, typically, you would have some CSS files somewhere and would point at them when your app gets served. Now, you can create a new subfolder and you can name it whatever you want, but the convention is to call it public because you want to indicate that this is a folder that holds content which are always exposed to the public crowd, or which is always exposed to the public, so where you don't need any permissions to access it. And that's important. All your files here are not accessible by your users. If you ever try to enter localhost and then something like views shop HTML, that will not work because this is simply accepted by Express and it tries to find a route that matches this. It tries to find it here in app.js basically, and also of course in shop routes and so on. It doesn't find that route and therefore it doesn't give you access. You can't access the file system here, and that is of course good and what you want. But now I actually want to make an exception. I want that some requests can just access the file system, because ultimately, let's say in shop HTML, I want to have something like a link in here where I simply point at something like CSS main.css, anything like that. And my imagination would be that in public, I have a CSS folder with a main.css file in there. And that is the file I want to serve with this link. Now, right now, this wouldn't work. But let's take that code already, that style code, cut it out of shop HTML and move it in there. Because that pretty much is the main styling we use in all our pages, the header and the body. Let's remove the style tags here. And obviously, if I now save and reload my main page, all the styling is gone now, because it can't find the main CSS file, as you can see here in the developer tools, because we can't access the file system. Now, you could say, yeah, the path is incorrect, right? It's public CSS. But even if I change it to this path, you will see that if I reload this file, it will never work. And now it does look in the public folder. For this, we need a feature Express.js offers us. We need to be able to serve files statically. And statically simply means not handled by the Express router or other middleware, but instead directly forwarded to the file system. And for this, we register a new middleware with app.use, and this is one Express.js ships with. Therefore, we use the Express object itself, so this object we're importing there. And this does have a static method. And this is a built-in middleware, as you can read on the right. It serves static files. So we can execute this function, and now we just have to pass in a path to the folder which we want to serve statically. So basically, a folder which we want to grant read access to. It's only read access, but that's still more than what we normally have. And here again, we can construct this path with path join, and then simply our dir name, so our root folder, and then public, because I want to grant access to the public folder in our current folder here, so in the dir name, so in the root folder. With this, users should be able to access the public path. And now if I save this and I reload shop HTML, it still doesn't work. The reason for that is that the path with public at the beginning here is wrong. Instead here, we should omit this and directly act as if we are in the public folder already. Because this is basically what Express will do here. It will take any request that tries to find some file, and that's important. It looks at the extension. So anything that tries to find a .css or .javascript files, if we have such a request, it automatically forwards it to the public folder. And therefore, then the remaining path has to be everything but that public. So therefore, we strip the public out of this path and just act as if we already are in the public folder, because this is where file requests will be forwarded to. So now if I reload here, this looks much better, right? Now we find that main CSS file, because now this path can be resolved because we request a file here, and if I omit .css, it therefore will fail. But if I add it again, this is handled by the static middleware and forwards the request to the public folder. By the way, you could register multiple static folders and it will funnel the request through all of them until it has a first hit for the file it's looking for. But here I'll just go with the public folder. Now with that, we can of course take that link and also add it in add product in our head section. Now there we just have to watch out. In the style tags I got more than what I set up in main CSS. So we'll also add a product.css file and move the extra styling code, which begins here with product form. I'll move all that into product CSS, and the other part in the style tags here can now simply be removed. And therefore I now also have to add an import here to CSS product.css. And in the 404 page, I of course also want to import my main CSS code. And there I got no extra code, so we can remove the style tags and simply import the link here. Now with that, if we save that and we reload this page, it works. Add product is looking good. Let's add a book here, looking good. And let's visit a route that does not exist, also looking good, regarding the styling at least. So this is now how we can serve files statically. And you're also not just limited to CSS and JavaScript files, you can also serve images and so on. So this is the last important piece for now, how you can serve content statically. In the next modules, we'll then dive deeper into actually doing something with that user data we can submit there, and we'll dive into a very interesting concept, the concept of templates, because that will allow us to turn our static HTML code, so basically the code which is hard-coded, which doesn't have any dynamic element, into more dynamic elements where we can inject data we have in our JavaScript code in the HTML templates we return to the user. Pretty interesting. We'll dive into all of that in the next modules.